Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Tech. My name is Neda Maria Kaizumi, and today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Errol Norlum, who is a respected, futuristic, and award-winning AI and data expert, recognized among Sweden's most influential technology leaders. As head of AI at H&M Group, he led the company's AI journey, recruiting over 150 specialists and embedding AI into core operations. Since founding the AI framework, he has advised enterprises in retail, telecoms, banking, and healthcare, guiding them through scalable AI transformation with responsibility and governance and measurable values that is good for them. Most recently, Advania Group acquired the AI framework to strengthen AI capabilities across Northern Europe, enabling Mr. Nurum to expand his impact while upholding ethical, value-driven AI practices. A highly regarded speaker and advisor, he excels as translating complex AI strategies into actionable business outcome. Welcome to the show, Mr. Arrow.
Thank you so much, Neda. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let's start a little bit back. You started your career building the fraud and AML systems at Nordea. Later, you moved into global data science teams at Vodafone before leading AI at H&M. What sparked your passion for combining AI with business impact across industries?
It's my favorite question of all time because it's the question we should all ask and look for, I think, in our careers. So my passion, when I came to school and even after school, I'm not sure if I should be ashamed, but I wasn't super motivated sitting, studying for many years with no clear plan. I'm really, when you see people that has a passion and they take it early in life, like music, art, even mathematics, there's a lot of those people. I'm a bit jealous that they found it so early, but my passion and my guiding star came at Nordea, which I joined, I think it's close to 20 years ago, straight out of university. I was actually still in university, so I got a night job at Nordea. I was working through the nights, and you can imagine in the middle of the night, what happens is customers need to contact the bank because you might be out traveling or something breaks, or you just need to block your cards because they were stolen after a night out, which happens quite often. And I was the one sitting there in the middle of the night during my studies, just, taking phone calls. But at the same time, I was also responsible for monitoring ongoing suspicious activities because it was a 24/7 department. It was a little bit like calling, 911 in the US or 112 in the European Union, but for banking. So I was sitting there and I was just monitoring things. And at the same time during days, I was studying. And in school, I got to learn about, predictive analytics. And I realized, because there were so many things coming in these queues, and I realized all of this is rule-based. This is just based on someone's experience. What if I take some of those things and algorithms that I learned in school and I build a predictive power instead? And I did. And since I was sitting in the middle of the night, I had all the access rights, so I could build it straight into the database. So I built a very simple predictive engine that could detect certain patterns. And, I implemented it, and overnight I could reduce the false positive rates with like 30%. And of course, the actual impact on detecting fraud was extremely significant. And I realized in that particular moment, the power of AI, analytics, and data. And I took a decision that this is what I'm going to work with for the rest of my career. And I'm going to drive adaptation and impact of that. And, the rest is, as they say, history.
I love that, and the path is kind of similar to mine. And I would say that I'm not ashamed of anything because, people are different. Somebody get it earlier, somebody later, but be proud of what you have achieved. It's amazing, I guess. Okay, at H&M, you led a major technical transformation, and then you recruited like 150 people after that. So what were the biggest hurdles in driving such large-scale change, and how did you build momentum there?
You only ask good questions. But I think it needs a bit of context. So when I left Nordea after about 10 years in different parts of the organization, I came to Vodafone. And at Vodafone, I was also driving a large-scale transformation and change. But back then, I didn't really know what the drivers were for adopting change. So I was a tech geek, and that I'm really proud of. I love the technology, I love the algorithms, I love distributed computing, and I love data. We built some great insights for Vodafone. We built them at large-scale clusters, top-of-the-line technology, hundreds of people, consultancies, employees, and a global reach. But adaptation was close to zero. We couldn't get it out till the organization. So I'm not ashamed to say we failed miserably, but we learned tremendously. So when I came back to Sweden, I started working very briefly for a company called Think Big Analytics. They were one of the first big data and AI firms that later on was purchased by Teradata. That's why it became a short journey. But they put me into more of a pre-sales role when the purchase went through. So I just travel around to large enterprises and ask them, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Repetitive patterns became quantitative data on who fails and who succeeds. And those patterns, when H&M called me a few years later and said, hey, do you want to come and help us with this? We translated into actual teams and actions. And what I learned when I traveled around, and also when I read about successful tech transformations and tech teams and startups and the Netflix story, was really about, it's not about the technology. It's about people. Technology we will have. Technology is not the problem. Technology will constantly change. But I have a saying that I've stole very shamelessly from Kent Beckett, who wrote Extreme Programming, that the problem isn't change, because change is always going to happen. The problem is people's and organizations' inability to deal with change when it comes. So, example, at H&M, we built a forecasting engine to support 1,000 people that did forecast and did the orders out to the factory for H&M clothes. They refused to use it. The head of the brand, Madeleine Persson, even said, I can predict it better than any algorithm any given day. And when you have that type of leadership, because the request came from her boss, Carl Johan at the time, who was the CEO, and when you have people that, not really buying into the storyline, you have a hard time getting the organization to use the algorithms and the results. So we realized we need to take people to sit with those teams. We needed to be mandated to use them. We need to hold them accountable. And when there's a deviation that they say, no, that's wrong from the algorithm side, they need to, answer up to that. And then we could drive adaptation rates from 60 up to 96%. And we thought we were done, like perfect, now we've done it. And that took quite some time. So we took a step backward. And guess what happens? The adaptation rate plummeted. So the problem isn't algorithm, because we had proven in backtesting and in production that the algorithms were performing better at scale, at the long tail. Maybe not the latest fashion, because that's very individualistic still, but the long tail of permutations that we needed to forecast. So we realized that this is about people. So time in H&M, we built up technology, we built out change management, and then we spent a lot of focus on communicating. Okay, how is this material going to look like? How are we going to communicate? Where are we going to be internally, but then also externally, to validate with the market that people internally built out the pride. Oh, they're talking about all this cool stuff. Oh, then I better live up to this, which drives change and adaptation and yields good results in the organization. Remember, technology is not the problem. And I hate to say this, people is. But people can also be the solution.
I absolutely agree. And when you were speaking about this, I kind of flashed back to the experience that I had. It's exactly the same. And I'm very happy that you were so persistent and with such a passion continue to hang on to your project and try to solve it, which I think that's the great quality that you have. Well, then you founded the AI framework to help organizations scale AI responsibility. What inspired you in this transition, and what gaps were you aiming to fill when you made your own enterprise?
Yeah. So at the time at H&M, I'd been there for close to 3 years. And of course, if you do a good job, people are acknowledging you for it. So, and I really had a good time at H&M. It's a wonderful company, great values. But it was a point where I feel like we're going into more of a maintenance mode. The ambition level was, level setting. We were performing value. And I felt like, now I've done this a couple of times, I see patterns. And when you're an ex-analyst and you work with data, you see patterns everywhere. And from patterns, you want to derive structure. And from structure, you want to do more value. So I just said to myself, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. And I'm just going to be stuck here forever. And I want to accelerate, because remember, when I discovered what I want to do, it was really about, adaptation. And adaptation is at a larger scale than H&M, even though H&M is everywhere. So it's really about, I want to create templates and blueprints for accelerated value adaptation in organizations. My focus is not to land and expand in organization, is to build up the capability to autonomously deliver value consistently with data and AI. So my business idea was probably the worst business idea of all time. Let the company build the capability themselves and remove the dependency on external help. That was really, my first pitch. Then if it landed well with organizations, I think most of them didn't believe me, because who would say I'm going to take myself out of the equation? But it seemed to be very successful. And the first couple of years was really just about strategic setup for, slow adaptation of AI that the companies had that I was working with. Not that the market was slow, but, these companies were. Creating a lot of different strategies, then going into first proof of values, then piloting production, scaling up different platforms, AI, data foundations, and all of a sudden we had helped more than 40 large enterprises. So it really worked, I would like to say. So the name AI Framework is really, we are named what we do. Frameworks, accelerated blueprints, and value focus.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love the fact that you emphasize on ownership of the company. So they should take ownership on what they do. And you have a philosophy which I like. You say like a strategy over the tools. I think that's quite well said. How does this approach shape your methodology when working with clients?
So it took me a bit of time to formulate what I'm going to say now. And I guess that was a maturity on my side where you need to, do your homework a little bit. And I really struggled with this, because there was always this strategy versus technology in many organizations, business versus IT. And there was always a gap and a misalignment, and it was very hard to bridge. And I mean, I have my feet in both worlds, might be a little bit stronger on the technology side, but I've always, I have a business background. That's what I studied. And then I studied technology as well. And I tried to combine them in a good way. And I was thinking about, how do we bridge this gap, and how do we create a common language? And, IT architecture has been around for quite some time. So why don't I just read up on that? And what really caught my eye is we need to change the language. We need to start talking about capabilities instead. And that's really the bridge, because the capability is directly translated into the ability to do something. And when you shift the conversation away from the tool or platform into, I want to be able to do this, you can define a lot of capabilities for an organization that aligns with the strategy. We want to be a leading AI player in finance, might be a strategic direction. Okay, what does that mean? Oh, that means that we want to have the best people. We want to have the quickest path to production. We want 90% of our processes to be AI engineered. And then you can start translating that into capabilities. Okay, we want the ability to put things into production quickly. And then you can break that down further in, okay, so what is the resources that I need? What is the technology, and what are the processes? And then you can measure the maturity on that level as well. And then you see where your gap is. And then you make strategic decisions on, okay, we should invest more in this area because we're really weak here. And our target said we should be strong. So we need to close these gaps first. That means these technology investments. That means these resources and these improvements in processes. And that's bridging the gap between strategy and technology, is to talk about capabilities instead.
Thank you. And that was very well said. I'm glad that you opened that up because that's something that we're going to do for our customers. But one of the best things has happened this year to me is to be able to have the opportunity to be your colleague. So you and I came almost at the same time to Advania. So Advania made this acquisition and bought AI framework to elevate the AI services across Europe. And now, how does joining the forces with such a major infrastructure like Advania has changed your scope and ambition so far?
If anything, it has only increased it. I think it's a good proof that our philosophy, methodology, and strategy has been the right one. I think with joining the Advania and getting amazing colleagues as yourself and many others, we are all of a sudden building a larger value proposition. It is, of course, hard for any company, but for smaller companies, to do the right investments, to do the bigger bets. But joining Advania all of a sudden makes us close the loop in terms of offerings. It makes it possible for us with the latest acquisition to actually provide infrastructure to back our words up, make bigger bets, to hire more experts, to meet the market earlier, but also sit together with a lot of smart colleagues and formulate our value propositions in a much clearer way. So I would say our ambition is even higher, and it's almost doesn't feel like an acquisition slash merger. It feels more like coming home, and now we can do it for real at a larger scale.
I can sign under what you said. That's absolutely right. So it feels that we know each other like years, and so think that I really enjoy taking all this strategy that we're building to the customer. But you're known for connecting strategy, technology, and business impacts. How do you ensure AI initiatives deliver tangible value while remaining ethical and scalable?
I think it all boils down to understanding what you are doing. I think that, I'm one of those that joined the AI revolution pre-GDPR, and it's a major difference on how we have shifted the conversation, because before GDPR, it wasn't much discussion about this topic ethically and privacy, and the landscape has really shifted and awareness has gone, and I've had a great opportunity to work with many smart people in this area. So it's really about the conversation, but how we actually ensure it is about measurement. There is this saying, what gets measured gets done, and I sign under that 100%. I think that the best methodology that we can have is to include our ethical frameworks inside of our measurement methodology. So any business case, any project that we ever start should have a clear template which defines what it is that we want to do, what it is value that we're expecting to do, who is impacted, who's the user, and how are we going to measure it. And in the measurement side, we should define the value, the effect, but also the impact on our ethical considerations. And we don't do it as a tick box exercise. We do that as a guiding star that we consistently follow up and track. And that's how I see what gets measured gets done. So it needs to be integrated into the AI development plans.
Absolutely, and it can't be said any better than what you said. Now, let's take this template that you're talking about and what can be measured and expand it to different industries. So, what are the cross-industry lessons you've drawn about the successfully adopting AI at this scale?
Different industries have different preset game plan, I would like to say. The biggest difference I really see is regulated industries versus non-regulated industries. Yes, we can talk all about, different industry speciality, but I think the key denominating factor is really about regulations. Especially in enterprises, medium to large one, we have a tendency of seeing, especially financial sector. They have a lot of money usually. They invest, but they're also extremely cautious when it comes to rules. That makes adaptation very slow, which means that it becomes very costly. When you take organizations like H&M, they do not have a choice. If they do something wrong, if fashion fails, if supply chain fails, they might go bankrupt within a couple of seasons. They have a cutthroat competition where, the big fashion retailers, you have Shein, you have Zara, you have Zalando providing other types of services. It is crazy. And we see that the adaptation is also moving with the market forces. So regulated industries, maybe bigger long-term investments, stability, predictability. And when it comes to, non-regulated, very quick industries, adaptation needs to be high because it is invest or die almost.
Absolutely. And I think, first of all, I totally agree with what you said, but now also the adaptation also requires from people, right? So it's kind of cultural change if you want it. So thinking about all these strategic works with the companies, both internally and also toward the client, can you share the insight on leading AI culture shift and managing the stakeholders' distribution of risk and reward at the same time?
Like AI is just another tool, and the people working with AI are also people. I think the main difference is that it's a new field, and new fields always are in scarce supply. And when things are in scarce supply, we probably treat it a little bit differently. It is not a standardized, access you can get. Of course, schools are trying to educate people. So one thing that I've learned as well is that this becomes a skill game. It's really about finding the right resources or finding people that actually can learn these skills, because it's very hard to find them. So you need to have a people strategy, which is also, based on a culture which attracts people. I think one of the things that we did really well at H&M was that we were out there, we were talking, and I told the CIO, in the beginning, I said, give him a little bit of time, and sooner or later, we will start seeing people spontaneously reaching out to see if we have jobs from our main competitors. And within a year, I sent him a screenshot from people at Amazon in the US that spontaneously reached out to me on LinkedIn and asked if we had any openings. So this started coming, and it's really about attracting and working on interesting problem. At the same time, you provide people with a purpose. So this risk mitigation, people might think that it's all about salary, but salary is secondary. And there's studies showing that, well, if you earn over 50,000 SEK a month or something, it's plateauing. You are not feeling as happy as another 10, 20, 30, 40, 100,000. It's not going to change your life drastically. But what you might see is, am I going to take this job where I earn 100,000 a month versus maybe 60,000 a month? But this job, I get to work with amazing people. I have a sense of belonging. I have a sense of purpose. I actually am a part of the process. I'm not just treated as a resource supposed to deliver around the clock on these terms. That's what I want to build. Now, I have no, implication on what we're going to pay people, of course, but the idea is it's not just about the money in salary and talent. It's about actually working on meaningful things. The sense of belonging, purpose, these are important things. So my risk mitigation strategy is trying, even though it's hard because culture is really hard. And I think Microsoft describes it really well. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think it says in the Redmond headquarters in the US of Microsoft, and it just explains everything. Good culture, make people stay, go the extra mile, and enjoy what they're doing. It gives them a sense of purpose, and then you can have whatever strategy you want. But if you don't get the people to align and be happy, it's never gonna realize itself.
Absolutely. And in certain time in my career, I selected to come down in salary. It's because of the factors that you just mentioned. So I totally understand that. So now we talked about the governance, we talked about strategy and the culture. Part of AI is also data and data quality, data security, and trustworthiness. And that comes to kind of responsible AI. So given the current focus on AI governance and compliance, how do you translate responsible AI into your daily work?
It's a really hard question, and I've always struggled with this because I always tend to go down the philosophy route. And I'm not sure how many nights I've sat with colleagues discussing AI. Can it think? Can it have an opinion? Is it biased? I remember one of the recruiting questions I was asked by the head of data science when I joined Vodafone was, about integrity of data. What is personalization? And I think back then, and this is, many years ago, over 10 years ago, I said, well, when it's personal but not creepy, that's where I draw the line. And I think that it's hard because we all have different lines where we draw what is our integrity, what can AI do. So I always say I'm a technologist, I'm not a philosopher. These are topics that I don't have an answer to, but I believe are super important. That's why I proudly also delegate a lot of these questions to my amazing colleagues that can help guide me. Then I will always follow my consciousness, which basically means that if it goes against my values, which I believe are very strong when it comes to integrity, I will never do it. I will never cross those lines. And I will only use AI for good, not evil. And at the end of the day, I will reject project that goes against my value system. And I will not create solutions which I believe are going against people's integrity.
Yeah, thank you for answering that this way. We have such a multidisciplinary AI department across Advania Group, so I think that will solve the problem.
Yeah.
At least that's something that I have very much passion for. So
yeah, I know. And this is what I look forward to create and integrate frameworks and have these discussions, both internally, but also with our customers. Because at the end of the day, we got to have our frameworks, but then we got to advise them and support them in implementing it. So it's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Think back on your journey from building anti-fraud systems to leading AI transformation and advising enterprise clients. What has been your most unexpected lesson in making AI impactful and sustainable?
What's really unexpected is always the power of data. I mean, you think you think that it's going to be really good. But you get so surprised even sometimes on how quickly and rapidly the technology moves. I think the biggest surprise is that, we were building models in Italy to try to get people onto a family plan for Vodafone. The model in itself just went completely haywire and started predicting cheaters instead. And yeah, that's cheaters, people who had marital affairs outside. And, you just sit there with the conclusions of this model because it had identified that when people left their home and their spouse might be at home, then they start calling someone else. And our model thought that, but that person should be then on the family plan. Obviously, they were calling someone that should not be on the family plan. And you just are amazed constantly over the insights that you didn't account for. And with transformers and GPTs and all of the new things, you just keep on being amazed on what we can do with data. And you have a hard time yourself. I have a thing that I think is funny, but maybe other people don't. I always say I stopped being a data scientist because I was really poor at predicting the future, because no one knows what's going to happen. So, when people ask me, what's the future of AI? I usually say, I have no idea, because I keep getting amazed all the time. And I'm wrong constantly. And that just makes me a really bad data scientist. And then I'd rather just talk about how can we build the solutions.
Absolutely. And I have started to using a phrase when people are asking about new solution. I say it doesn't exist yet, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week.
That's when you sit with a customer and they say, what investment should we do? And you answer them, well, if you asked me 6 months ago, I would have said this. Ask me today, I'll say this. Ask me in another 6 months, I'm going to say something that I don't know.
Yeah, in a world that is rapidly changing, it's very difficult to comment. I agree. I have a favorite question in this show, and that's when, if you had unlimited resources, what AI project will you pursue?
I wouldn't build an AI product. I would build AI education for the entire world. I would make sure everyone knows the power. One of my favorite sayings of all time is that the future It's already here. It's just unevenly distributed, and I would distribute it to the world because I think that we have the power right now with the solutions to transform and change the world. And I don't think it's fair that, the majority of the people using it is in the West world. I think that this needs to be everywhere, and it needs to be democratized, and it needs to be trained at an early age. So I would take all of those money and resources and I would put it into free education for all about AI.
That is beautiful, and I pray blessing over that thought. So hopefully God will provide for you. What does beyond the tech meaning to you? That's my final question, and it's also a favorite question because for me personally, is the technology is a tool, but what is the mean that you want to achieve after that? So I would like to see what does beyond the tech meaning to you.
I mean, now we're going to be maybe personal, but I mean, I think we're already there. I think for me, it's doing things that align with my values. And my values is a lot about, being a good person, to having right values, fairness, and equality in the world. When we say beyond the tech, I think that we need to make the right decisions today on how this technology is going to be used. Is it going to be used for good or for evil? My values makes me fight in the forefront of applying good. That's, I think, earlier question around, technology and sustainability, responsibility. We're going to do good. We're not going to do bad. We're not going to enable bad applications of AI. And if I get to decide in this world, we're going to spend less time on optimizing people buying and more time in making the world a better place with new insights in medicine, in living conditions, in distribution of wealth, because I believe that in a couple of years, hopefully, maybe when my kids grow up, we will see a world which is more equal and more wealth and resources have been distributed to increase the standard of living for everyone.
Wow, that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed, and I hope our listeners will enjoy it as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Errol Norlum, thank you.
Thank you all.